speaker is Tim, and the topic of his speech is travel, travel. And this is introduction to 90-minute training session on communication. Fellow Toastmasters, please welcome Tim.
Did you ever have a communication disconnect? You said something to somebody, a friend, or neighbor, or somebody in business, and just didn't understand what you were saying? Ever had that happen? It happens a lot. It's easy to happen because just a few things go wrong, the whole thing can blow up. And all of a sudden, a little problem can become a big problem. Now, with your friends, it's not such a big deal. They'll probably forgive you, no problem down the line. But in business, it can be a disaster. Absolutely a disaster. So it's important to understand the process of how communication works, how communication fits together. What are the steps involved? I found this out myself personally because of a very bad thing that happened to me a while ago when I was working in a different company. I was working in a different company as a secretary. I'm a secretary today. I was a secretary then. And I was working there. I was at my desk doing what I'm usually doing. And then my boss, the person I report to and support, Bob, kind of a big guy, came over to the desk and said, "Tim, come into my office. I got to talk to you." Just a hint, usually when these things are said, probably not the best news. You ever had that happen? Get a little nervous? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a little nervous going in there. So I went into Bob's office, sat down. Bob went out around the other side, sat down in the chair, put his elbows on the table, leaned forward, put his hands onto his chin and said, "Tim, why aren't you booking my New York hotels the way I asked you to?" Anyone ever traveled in New York or been around New York? Well, if you've done that, the one thing you know about New York and hotels is they're hugely expensive and they fill up very fast. If you don't book hotels like months in advance, you aren't going to get the hotels you want. And Bob usually booked the day before. Now, I didn't want to tell him that. You ever have a situation where you really didn't want to confront the other person? I didn't want to confront Bob. So that's what I said. I said, "Okay, no problem, Bob. When your hotels become available, I'll book them." Glad we cleared this up. Good talking to you. And I left. I thought that was it. That was the end of things. A couple days later, the phone rings. And it's Julie, my supervisor. This is the person in charge of all the secretaries across. So I picked up the phone and said, "Hello? Tim, why aren't you booking Bob's hotels?" "Well, you see, he books so late that I can't book the hotel right. You see, he books them in such a way that I can't possibly find the hotel he wants. I can't get the rate he wants." "Well, Tim, why don't you tell Bob that?" "Tim, you're having problems with communication. You've got to go to take some courses. I'm going to got some mandatory communication courses you're going to have to take, or we're going to have to discuss retention here." And I took those courses. And I found out I'd made a very, very fundamental mistake in the way I'd handled the situation with Bob. There was a step I kind of skipped over. A couple of steps, actually. We'll talk about them later. It's easy to skip those steps. It's a simple thing to do. Because if you don't know the process, things can go wrong. Sometimes horribly wrong. That's what I want to do today. I'm going to talk about that process, get involved in that process, explain what that is, how it works. Now, over time, I was able to work things out with Bob. Got along better, started to trust me, and finally, once I was able to explain what I needed, he did start booking further in advance, and I was able to get him to some of the hotels that he wanted. And things with my supervisor got better. A lot of friction. Didn't need to happen. And it all happened because just wasn't aware of the process. I wasn't aware of the different steps that are involved in communication. So today I want to make sure that you never have to go through that situation ever in your career or any sudden, unexplained calling into the office. I want to explain to you the steps, the processes there are in communication, basic communication. I'll take you through things like how you do not handle an off-the-cuff remark, how you deal with evaluations, how you deal with feedback, how you deal with all these different basic problems, how you deal with negotiation, and how to know when to handle, take one process and when to use the other process. Evaluation isn't negotiation. Don't ever, ever make that mistake. Talk about the differences and why understanding the differences is so important. So you learn all of that today just to make sure you don't get in that situation that I was with Bob.